The way you prioritize those two, thank you very much. And I was telling Senator Tester, I said in Alaska when the weather's like this, it's always hard to get inside. And but I thank you for hosting this, and thank you for the list of credentials there, the many things that we've been working on locally on veterans issues. What I wanted to do, and Senator Tester is joining us here. He is traveling with me. We'll be in Fairbanks later this afternoon. We'll be in Wasilla tomorrow, meeting with veterans throughout the state, and also talking about general issues that are important to our state and what our connection is. And the senator from Montana, there's a lot of direct connection. First off, in his state, there's over 100,000 veterans. And when we talk about ours here, over 80,000. We have
We're over 100,000.
There we go. So we're up there. So we're the top 2 states when it comes to per capita veteran population, which is very important. Also, Senator Tester sits on a variety of committees that are important to Alaska: energy, veterans, homeland security, small business. I'm probably missing a couple here.
Indian Affairs,
banking. All these are very important to us here in Alaska. And I met Senator Tester last fall and asked him if he'd be interested in coming up if I got into this race. It was an early stage of the campaign, and he indicated a desire to come to Alaska, his first time to Alaska. He's brought his wife also, and she's probably hopefully enjoying the good weather right now.
Yes, she is.
And but it's just an honor to have Senator Tester here. He's also a freshman. He's 2 years into his office. He came in with a wave of about 10 new U.S. senators, 9 Democrat, 1 Republican. And,
how did he get in?
Well, he'll probably tell you. He worked hard in a state that was a state that was a tough state to win. He won with I know you know the number right down to the T, where it was 3,562.
3,562
votes. So he knows how to win tight races, but also what's so great about Senator Tester is he is the new breed of senator. He's real. He's about getting results. He never forgets where he's from. He's a farmer, and he goes back and farms and does what he needs to do back home to remember where he is and who he is. But he also recognizes
drives a red truck.
Drives a red truck. He is what I call a real Montanan, but really a real Alaskan too, in an indirect way. But it's just an honor to have him here, and what we want to do today is let Senator Tester talk a little bit, and then see if there's questions and answers. And I know some of the press that are here probably will have some questions, but I'll shoot it over to you.
Well, thanks, Mark. I appreciate the kind comments, and it's very, very nice to be here in Alaska. I've got to tell you, this is great. I know the weather is every day is like it is outside today. I'm envious, but it's good. It's good to be here. Mark talked about some of the committees I'm on, and I'll tell you that one of the ones that I've really focused on, and it's kind of come about just as circumstances go, as veterans. Because once I got appointed to the Veterans Affairs Committee, I started reaching out to veterans groups, talking about issues, and I could not believe the number of issues that were out there for veterans that really haven't been addressed, and haven't been addressed for a number of years. And I think it's long overdue that we start giving the people who have served this country so very, very well and literally put their lives on the line the kind of support they need and that we're promised. When a veteran goes in, or when a serviceman goes in and puts their name on the line to go serve, I don't think they thought when they got back that they'd have to fight for what they rightfully deserve. And so what I've been trying to do over my year and a half or so in the U.S. Senate is to work with my colleagues to get some things righted. One of the things that was blatantly obvious to me when I first got elected is disabled vets got 11 cents a mile to go to a veterans clinic if they had a problem. Well, 11 cents a mile. It doesn't pay for your gas, doesn't pay for anything. It's nothing. So we got that bumped up. We wanted to get it up to 48.5, which was the federal rate then. We couldn't get by the minority on the committee, to be honest with you. We negotiated 28.5, and we're going to continue working on that to get that bumped up because I think it's important. We're also going to be working on things, and why I really want to hear from you folks. So, Montana and Alaska are both rural states. We both have some things in common. So some of the things that I see in Montana, if I hear it from you guys too, I know it's more general than that. But one of the things we're trying to do is get more medical personnel into rural areas of this country.
Yeah.
In rural America, veterans who live there don't live as long as vets who live in urban America. And I think one of the reasons is access to health care. The issue about clinics and clinics around the state, the issues about hospitals and accessibility to those hospitals, and not having to wait if you've got a problem for weeks on end, or head to Seattle, or in our case head to Denver to get help, it's a big deal. And you know, and if I'm healthy, a drive to Denver is a big deal. If you're sick, it's almost impossible to get done, and you guys have a further drive than that if you've got to send somebody down to Washington State. So these are issues that are critically important. As you folks well know, we passed the 21st Century GI Bill last week. Hopefully it'll make it through conference and the President will sign it and not veto it, and it'll go into effect. But I think it only makes sense for, in this day and age, to take care of people's college education like it was back in the day for those World War II veterans. It's one of the things that helped make this country great, as we were talking about. And it's time we do the right thing, and it's money well spent, money well invested from my perspective. But there's also other issues out there around post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injury and prosthesis for limbs that are lost in the war. All these things they come with a cost, and it's a cost of war, and we need to pay for them. And people shouldn't have to argue for the benefits, and they shouldn't have to argue to get through the doors of the VA system. So we'll work to help facilitate and make that happen. But I would love to hear, truthfully, I would love to hear from you folks what issues you see affecting Alaskan veterans that we could tackle in Washington, D.C. to hopefully make things better, for better quality of life and better livability here for the vets.
I worked on the pipeline, and that was a distance of 788 miles on that line. Now, you draw that line over to Kotzebue, and you have veterans up in that remote little area. To travel 788 miles to water or to Anchorage or to Fairbanks, only 300 miles less, is a tremendous burden on them. And we don't even have traveling VA personnel in this state to go about to those remote locations to see what is needed, much less do anything about what is needed.
Is there, so what you're talking about, it would work if we actually had nurses and docs that were able to go to them in a mobile unit?
I'd like to suggest two ideas. Number one, Lisa Murkowski got an amendment passed, which is going to change a lot of that, which will allow the Indian Health Service to treat veterans and then bill back to VA.
That's right.
VA, as you know, is fighting like hell not to let that happen, and their testimony, quote unquote, said, "You're stealing veterans' money." But we have Indian health clinics all over the state. In any significant community, there's an Indian health clinic. You have Indians or Eskimos or Inupiat or whoever that are veterans that are using Indian health services when they should legitimately being charged back to VA. So if that passes the House, and hopefully it will, it appears that it will, that will change that. The circuit rider concept is a viable concept up here. And a lot of agencies use it. When I was director of water, we had a serious problem of maintaining water systems in villages. And you couldn't keep somebody in the village managing the system, but you could keep a circuit rider going from village to village on a schedule to maintain and control those. So that was a program that worked out very effective. It ended up being cheaper than trying to house people in certain areas.
To create an infrastructure in those villages.
Exactly. And then if you connected these people, nurses or docs, or particularly psychiatrists and psychologists, which is a huge need in a lot of states, can't get them, with some sort of local service, either through the Indian Health Service or somebody else that's providing services on a PD or an RN basis, that would help. We do a lot of medicine in the state. If you had time, I'd take you over to Providence and introduce you to my best friend who runs Providence. They have the most extraordinary telecommunications center there in the world. And they do diagnostics, they do it all through telecommunications. We've had telemedicine up here for 6 decades almost.
And they have access to some of those remote areas you were talking about?
Absolutely. Any place with a community center or a clinic, of Indian Health Service, or a doctor can get on the phone, can call in, can get a consult with docs, et cetera. So those are sort of the two angles of that. Let's take advantage of systems that are already out there, but enable those systems to build back to VA. The second part of that is, and the biggest issue for veterans is the same thing in Montana as you know. We have medical services here in the state. We have doctors who call me on a regular basis. In fact, I'm working with the State Medical Association now on this problem. I've had this client for 8 years. Why is the VA sending my amputee client to Seattle now? I don't understand. Have I done something wrong? The VA says, no, we just decided that we wanted to send him to Seattle because it's cheaper. We have to find a way, and our delegation has not found a way yet. Lisa's working hard on it. Ted seems to be ambivalent about it. But we have to find a way to enable veterans to get the services in-state. They may not be at the VA clinic, but they're provided here. There are very, very few medical services now with the opening of the cancer center at Providence that are not available.
We have to also understand that separates them from the families also when they move, so there's another separate issue there that's important also.
I have veterans in my unit that go to Seattle for blood transfusions.
Oh,
Wow.
And they do it every 2 weeks. Now, you can't tell me that's cheaper than having them serviced by a local doctor.
Well, what you have to understand is, being in the Senate, you may pass a bill. That's fine and dandy. Once that bill is passed, and it's a good bill, it does what it's supposed to do, then you give it to the bureaucrats. You know, the professional bureaucrats. And the bill will inevitably say the director will draw up regulations.
Right.
And then the regulations are such
Yeah.
that
The intent is lost.
the intent is totally lost and is totally confused. And it seems to me that the good intentions of the legislature, the Congress, is nullified by the actions of the professional bureaucrats
Amen.
and the political appointees.
Well said.
Now, when I was in the service, I got discharged. I was not told about anything about benefits or anything. You know, I've been a BFW member almost longer than Mark has been told. and they said, well, sure, you can go to the VA hospital, you know. Education, you can get your education. There were 3 colleges. You know, Fairbanks had the university. It was Alaska Methodist University. And we had a little community college in Anchorage. But I'm from a village, Cantwell. But where?
Right.
And people don't like to face it, but there was a lot of prejudice. There was and stigmatism on the native population. You know, if you were a native, you were stupid, you were dumb. Nobody hired you. And at the time I got discharged, there were still covenants over here in Rogers Park that said no natives will own houses in this area unless there were maids or something. You know, those type of things. And so the jobs that were available were either government on the railroad, you were a laborer, and then you weren't a laborer in Anchorage, and you weren't a laborer in Portage or Girdwood, which are little communities. You were a laborer out in Bush, you know, out Talkeetna and Curry, where you weren't seen. Those type of things.
Right.
And so, and when it comes to, you have mobile military medical units. Poof, they're mobile, just like that. Instead of doing maneuvers once a year, every 3 months, send them to Ozinki, send them to Kotzebue.
send them to
That's an
Iggy.
excellent idea. You know, in Vietnam we did PR medicine. I was a medical in Vietnam. I mean, that's a
Now,
great idea.
now you've got them mobilized, you can train them.
And it's at no additional cost.
Right.
Using existing resources.
And one other medical aspect is the dire need for dental attention in the remote areas. And if on that basis, they could also send along a dentist or 2, that would be of great help, because it's not only the veteran, but the veteran's family. They should be looked at least
I think the idea, you know, would you get a sense, and I think similar with Montana here, it's a little more vast in the distance you have to go, but in the rural communities, it's not about setting up all these individual infrastructures. It's really about these kind of thinking out of the box and how do you utilize existing resources. This is a great idea, you know, just on the surface about how do you maneuver and utilize existing resources to meet these growing demands, which as the conflict continues, more and more, you know, a lot of our folks who are out of the state are being activated, and as they return, they're in the villages, they're in the communities, they're not in Anchorage, you know, they're in the villages, and we have to make sure there's a connection back. So that's an interesting.
And the military is mandated to hold community action programs, and something like that would fall very beautifully into.
They could take a C-130 and load it up with toys and go to a village.
That's what they do.
That's a good
To heck with
point.
this.
Good point.
I mean,
Yeah.
You know, let's load it up with some dentists and go out there.
Yeah,
Good point.
That's a great idea.
And another thing too, all your programs, your educational programs, has great benefits, you know, which is worthless to me. Been retired for 3 days older than dirt.
I've never seen you retire. What are you talking about? You keep calling me and sending me issues.
The way you said about the regulations, and let me put it in perspective with the new GI Bill. I absolutely guarantee you, based on the experience of Vietnam veterans and the way in which that bill was interpreted through regulation, that a lot of the, what I would call trade or employment kinds of choices that veterans want to make, not to go to a four-year college, but get a certain kind of professional certification, will be managed down. And what I hear statewide from Vietnam veterans is they're not interested in college education programs. They're interested for their, like my son just finished his 4th year in Iraq. He's interested in getting in voc ed.
Skill development.
But what happens is, for example, if you're a truck driver today, the level of training and certification required to operate these double rigs that we have in Alaska up and down the slope is way beyond just getting your driver's license.
Right.
But that doesn't qualify. There's just a whole host of those kinds of work-related training things that during the time they're doing it, because most of the trade unions will bring you in.
Oh, yeah.
But they can't provide you a stipend for your taking care of yourself for the 3 to 6 months that you're going through training.
Right.
The VA, I absolutely guarantee you, will find a way to eliminate as many of those opportunities as possible through the regulatory process. So the language of the committee in its oversight capacity has got to keep a close eye in the promulgation of those regulations with respect to the training components of the new GI Bill. Because once they're promulgated, they're promulgated.
That's right.
And then it's tough as hell to get back.
That's right.
Having a staff director on committee bring those up during drafts so that staffers know about it on a regular basis, absolutely critical. And a letter from the committee saying, excuse me, Mr. Secretary, I don't think you realize what we intended in this language. You misread our intent.
Right.
Could be critical to affecting tens of thousands of veterans.
That's good to know. I mean, that is absolutely.
I can tell you what it costs to go to Palmer and get your CDL.
Right, exactly.
It costs $9,850 because I paid for my son to go there. I couldn't find any, he couldn't find any help. He came to me and says, Dad,
And some of these guys, you know, you take the, you know, up in Red Dog in the Manor region where there's truck drivers, these guys can make 60, 70, 80,000 a year, good pay, and locally. So they're great opportunities in the, you know, as people decide on education choices, it is career education, skilled job training, it is college education, it's kind of a multi-facet now. And people, you know, we see it from a city perspective, and obviously in the federal end, you're absolutely right.
I'll give you an example.
When you do the educational benefits, they expire in 10 years.
I mean, the new bill's
You get a-
15.
You get a person that's 18 years old and comes out of the service at 20, at 35, he may be still doing something, and at 40, he wants to go to college.
Yeah.
He can't. Well, he can, out of his own pocket.
Right.
But I think, because of education and to bring the younger generation more into an educational field. I think if a veteran does not use his benefits within a certain length of time, then 50% of maybe one son, one daughter, one child of his should be able to use the tuition, at least 50%.
Did the Warner Amendment pass or not?
Transferability.
I don't know.
I got the note from Warner's office, he even sent me a copy of the page, and my understanding is it was a study provision that DOD had to do a study on the effects of
Suzanne, do
transferability.
you remember? I don't think it passed in there.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
So that's a major issue for a lot of us.
Right.
For example, my son, career Army, just finished 4 years in Iraq. He has no interest in going to college, but he'd like to be able to provide a way for his daughter to go to college, and if he spends 30 years in the Army, he's not going to have the money
To do it.
to do it. But if he could take his GI Bill and his various bonuses that he gets for serving and transfer those so his daughter can go, would be.
Big
You
deal.
talk about retaining people in the service.
Yeah,
Hello,
there we go.
hello.
Yeah.
That's
a great
that's
way.
a trick. So if there's any way to get that back in on the House has already passed this on another bill,
Right.
and all they would have to do is attach that. You have a copy of that bill to
Work
that
on that.
bill and put it back in conference, and then it's
Good.
probably will survive.
Right.
But given the number of GIs or service persons that get out, I would say a majority of them have no interest in a 4-year degree.
Right.
They're very interested in helping their kids,
Right.
or maybe their wife, get a degree or get some sort of vocational training, which would increase the quality of their life,
Oh, absolutely.
more than that's what it's all about.
Right.
Well, if they don't get college preparatory training in the school system, from grades 1 through 12, they get tagged and they get pegged, and
Well, the university's doing a very good job of dealing with that. Anybody can go to the University of Alaska. Now, they may put you in a sort of a rehab program for the first year to get your grade and
Up to snuff.
your skills up to snuff. But again, I want to emphasize 1,000 times, most GIs don't choose the 4-year degree. If they have an opportunity, for example, if you want to get a job in Alaska, what's one of the best things you can have? It's a pilot's license. It's like having a taxi license or a driver's license. We used to have more pilot's licenses than we did driver's licenses. That's really when I came to Alaska in the 70s. Now, getting a pilot's license enables you to do a whole bunch of jobs in the state. But I don't think, under the current GI Bill that just passed, that you could use that to get a pilot's license.
Well,
I know when I
now
worked
you need a
with the Department of
CDL and a
Interior.
welder's license.
Did you have a comment, sir? I seen you raise your hand a couple times.
Well, I agree with what you guys are talking about, but I'm just confused. I'm a Korean veteran. Maybe that's the reason I'm confused. Why does that GI Bill even run out?
It's good, that's a good point.
Hey, when I went into the infantry, it was my life. You know, what's the deal here that they put a limit on, you know, well, to give you a little example, I'm retired, probably retired, but I kind of would like to take a college course now and then. You know, I got the time now.
Good for you.
What's so terrible about something like that? I earned it.
Right.
Well, some of us don't sit with the, you know, the old idea after World War II, was you get out and get a job and stay for 30 years and retire. Now we know you change careers 7 to 10 times in a lifetime.
Right.
And every time you change careers, guess what you need to do a lot of times is go back and get some additional
That's exactly.
training, so.
Yeah.
I spent 18 years on Okinawa after I got out of service, and the University of Maryland was setting up classes, as they do in many bases, various universities. And I thought, I wonder if I could use any part of that Korean GI Bill. And I went there, and they studied it, and they studied it, and I got the word back. No, it doesn't apply to all the key areas of study. So I didn't take French. I just wanted a little course.
Were you gonna say something?
Well, what I was going to say is that oftentimes legislations are a work in progress to legislation. I wasn't with Jim Webb to get the nucleus of people. Maybe that he had to give that up to be able to move the bill forward. We can always amend the law down the line. I think what's critical, what I heard today, I've heard a lot of good stuff. What was critical is what you said about bureaucracy, and you said about the bureaucracy. Making sure that I have my staff and other folks there through that conference committee, and when they're promulgating the rules is critically important. And that's the other thing, we will get on your email. Because the truth is you guys know first when the stuff isn't working. You know first when you go in to get that plumber's certificate or whatever the heck you're getting, that they're not paying for it, and then we can go back on it. But no, those are good things to keep in mind.
One of the things Congress beats up the VA on, and legitimately so, is the failure to reach their outreach mandate. But then Congress never gives them the money to do it.
That's right.
There needs to be a serious look at the way the VA looks at outreach. And let me tell you why. The worst fear of the VA in Alaska is that the 80,000 veterans in the state of Alaska will get one of these books. Now, the reason I say that is some of us have worked very hard to get a law passed this legislature, which will provide us a list of all the veterans in the state through a question on the permanent fund application now, which says, are you an American veteran? The names, addresses, and phone numbers and emails then go to the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs and any congressionally chartered veteran service organization and enter into a contract with the state
To get that list.
to get that list, and they can only use it for providing information and services. This is a little booklet that the foundation that I run has acquired that we can send out to 8,000 veterans. But frankly, that's something the VA should be doing.
Yeah, you're right.
And so the VA is going to get that list of all of our veterans in the state, and they should be mandated at least once a year to provide a letter and a small little book. Those cost $6. The federal book costs $5, which is substantially bigger and much more difficult to read. This company does these for DOD and all the training facilities for DOD.
Do you get any money from the VA for this at all?
No.
You don't qualify for everything in this book. This is everything that's available.
That's right.
Right.
It's like a street Napa Vanquish.
Right.
You know, so you can't walk every street, but it's all there and out there.
And so the foundation, your foundation is paying for that at this
Yeah.
point.
Senator Chester, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me the opposition to the GI Bill currently has to do with, they think service people are going to get out of the service early.
That's right.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I disagree with that.
I do too.
I totally disagree, and
I
I
think it's a
disagree
hell of
with
an
our senator
improvement.
who's pushing that.
Yeah.
But how do we fix that?
Well, I think it's education, and I think it's going to help. It's going to help recruit. You got to keep it. One of the things that I found out about here about a month ago is there's 2 million people less in the active military than there was in the 80s. The reason for that is that's why we're using contractors now. And I think that if we give people benefits, I mean honest to God benefits for serving in our military, I think they're going to be much more inclined to serve. If in fact it does look like people are serving 3 years and getting out, and by the way, that doesn't apply to the people who are in the academies or ROTC, but if they do serve their 3 years and get out, we may be able to do something with this, taking a longer transferable issue. So there's things we can do there, but I also think that if somebody wants to serve their country for 3 years and get out, God bless them.
Well, they deserve
They
it.
should
I got to continue, because if they're going to tell them, okay, they're going to get out in 3 years, well, the government is lying to us
That's
because
right.
they've got stop loss. Some of these guys can't get out even if they want to.
Well, that's a
You
good
know?
point.
So
That's a
the
very
government
good
is
point.
they're strangling them.
When you're forced,
That is a good point.
if you get out in 3 years, you're forced to stay in the reserves for 3 years.
Yes.
You know, if you get out in 2, you're forced, but you don't hear that.
Yep.
You know,
You're right.
and they say, well, this person only served for 3 years. But you put him in a war zone, and you shoot a bullet at him, it doesn't make no difference whether it's 30 years
That's right.
or 1 day. You know, that bullet says to whom it may concern.
You are so correct.
That's right.
You know, that bullet says to whom it may concern.
I think it was. I think the real argument that the people who opposed the 21st century GI Bill was cost too much money. That's the real argument.
Yeah,
My point is,
Without admitting it.
that's right. And my point is that
But we could
taking
put-
care of our veterans is a cost of war,
Absolutely.
and we need to do it.
Well, we've been
So we
bean
could put-
counting ever since the days of McNamara.
Yeah,
But we could put $100 million to study tigers in India.
no, that's right.
Right,
No, I
mean,
mean-
we've got Alaskans, we're like.
Yes,
right to the point.
Listen,
You know, there's,
if anybody out there has something to say to input, please don't just let us corner the conversation. Please provide your input. If you got questions, raise your hand and throw it in here. Everybody is equal here. Please.
There's something else about Alaska Native veterans and bureaucrats. When we came back out of Vietnam, there was a whole bunch of us, and the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act was in the works. And we were fighting over that. And, well, like when I got back out of the service, I applied for my Indian allotment subsistence. I was told, no, I'm not taking any applications because land claims, they're fighting over land claims, so we're not taking any applications. Well, it's a lie. You know? I didn't know any better. I mean, the first time I'd been in a big city was when I got drafted, right? I went from 40 below to 30, to 60 above grade. You know, and wearing fatigue jacket, running in sand, almost killed me. I mean, just in boot camp. I mean, and Don Young got legislation passed, but he got the dates wrong, and he admitted. So that veterans, Vietnam-era veterans could reapply. But he got the dates wrong. Then he tried to correct it, never could get that passed.
what year was that?
Well,
He'll
I
tell you.
think
I saw your packet there, I knew you were ready.
it was the 109th Congress, and in the 110th Congress, Lisa Murkowski introduced the bill. I have copies here for you. And I also have a resolution that the state of Alaska passed, which I testified at and pushed the state to pass. This went into committee. S2000 went into committee. Never came out. The latest one had a full committee hearing, and then it went into a bottomless pit or something.
Another problem with the allotment.
And Lisa's got a companion with this one in the Senate?
I don't think it's going to use anything anymore.
But one of the other problems is not only getting the application dates fixed or corrected, but also BLM does not have the money to finish the surveys on the allotments so that people will get them before they die. Most Alaska Native veterans today who have made application for allotments do not have those allotments yet because BLM does not have the survey money to do the work that enables it to be conveyed. So it's, again, it's a follow-up problem of not only getting the legislation out there, getting that fixed, but ensuring there's money and some sort of stock, dead, you better get it done by a certain date. Because most of these guys will be dead before they get their allotment, and then it's not even transferable to their family.
Right. And allotment is critical for the Alaska lifestyle for subsistence hunting and fishing or whatever the history might be of fishing.
Yes.
So it is, it's about timing and the acknowledgement that the years were wrong, everyone acknowledges it, and it's not a complicated thing to fix, but it seems to become complicated for a variety of who knows what reasons.
And it doesn't affect the majority of Alaskans, but it affects
very small
a lot of Alaskans who are disenfranchised in the process.
Right.
One other thing, currently, and has been for the past couple of years, the Army, the National Guards, and the reserves are being chewed up and used up dreadfully in this current engagement. Isn't it about time that we consider a draft? because our citizen reserves are just being torn apart.
You may be right. I don't know if I want to go there, to be honest with you.
Well, you're
But-
over
but-
age as I've
but-
been all of it.
But I will tell you that we're going to have to make some serious investment in the military because it is stretched to the thin, and our guards and reserves are they're really getting
Chewed up.
chewed up. You're
Well,
right.
you know, DRD's done a very serious look at that. They've got a very good study on exactly what they need
Yeah.
to make that happen. And you're looking at, what, 2 divisions and 1 additional brigade in Marines, 2 divisions gun, 1 additional brigade in Marines, and you're back where you need to be to maintain.
Right.
But the longer you wait for that,
That's right.
the worse it's going to be. I mean, there's just internally, an extraordinary opportunity to set those up ASAP and take all those combat career people that have been out there and been in it and bring them into those new divisions and staff them up so that you've got a very activated or immediately activated combat ready unit.
You know what I'd like to know is who in the hell appointed the United States as policemen of the world? You know, what are we doing in Iraq? I'm confused.
We've stretched our military out in a big, big way, that's for sure.
Well, they're stretched again. I go back to that point that what their fix-all for this is, I don't think anybody enters the service knowing that at the end of that term of service, the government has every little right to keep him if they want to.
Yeah.
They come in and enlist for 3 or 4 years, they take 3 or 4 years, I'm gonna get my training, I'm gonna see some overseas, and I'm gonna get out. The government says, no, they don't have to pay you more because they know they're gonna be able to keep you if they want to, by law. And if you don't know, you're AWOL and you're gonna go to jail.
Yeah.
Those guys are strangled, and it's not fair, those young troops. I don't know that I really personally agree with the draft. Pay them some more money, keep them.
No, I agree.
Do what you gotta do.
And by creating the new units, you create promotional opportunities that are simply not available today within the existing system. So people that are involved in careers can move into a new unit, into a promotional slot, and get promoted. I mean, you have people that are in the service now for 10 years and they're a Spec 4. Not because they're not extraordinary soldiers, but they simply don't have a way to move up the line. But
No
if you
slots
open that
available.
up and move them around, they can get an E5, they can get an E6, which is a hell of a better life than an E4.
There's another subject that I think is important that I don't think the government is paying close enough attention to. And I don't know the exact number, but I think I heard on TV that every year our suicide rate is going up. And most of these suicides are by soldiers who are not in over there, but they're coming home because of depression and other factors. I think it's 108 now in this last year.
New study just came out.
And every year it goes up and up and up. They need to address that before it becomes pandemic.
You should have a report committee that just came out last week that is frightening.
Yeah.
It's really frightening.
And, yeah, and the last report I got was about 6 weeks ago that they were trying to lowball those estimates.
Well, and let me invite you to the VA. Classic example. It took Lisa Senator Bukowski about 2 years to figure out what I was telling her was true, and that is the VA will tell you we only have 72,000 veterans in the state. Now, those of us who work in veteran services know that's not true. But the reason the VA continues to use that number is because their percentage of service at 72,000 is above the national average. What does that do? That enables the senior leadership of VA to get bonuses. Now, the U.S. Census says we have 75,400. That was in 2000. We have almost 80,000. We know that just because of what we do.
And all the work that
But the VA will continue to tell you we only have 72,000.
You know,
Okay, you understand how that works?
Yeah.
Okay. But they will not change that statement. And Lisa said to me at the last meeting, I finally understand what you're saying, and they lied to me again, and I told them they should at least use the 2000 census. But
Exactly right.
Alex will do it.
yeah, I think you got a heck of a point there. I was a service officer for Post 1 for 3 years before I was elected commander. I don't know how to explain it, but the Vietnam veterans, I'm a Korean veteran, were dying like flies in civilian life. And I could not myself put the handle on it. I worked with a lot of the Vietnam veterans, but it's just unreal how they come into civilian life and was dying like flies.
Agent Orange destroyed a lot of people from the Vietnam conflict. And you and I know Mike Smith. He was Agent Orange and he had elephant feet. And the skin was stretched so far it would break open and ooze. He died of cancer about a year ago. Getting any kind of service out of the Veterans Affairs was a long drawn-out effect, and it was not until he was damn near terminal that he finally got care at the Veterans Hospital in Seattle. And he died alone because he was down there and his family was up here.
If you want to know what has us really pissed off, that's it. We work, as you know, Vietnam veterans work very hard to get a presumptive disability for exposure.
Right.
Most veterans in the United States are absolutely unaware that when they're diagnosed with prostate cancer or a whole list of cancers, that if they knew that they were exposed, that they have a presumptive disability. They just simply don't know that, and that's part of the outreach program. One of the things that we're trying to do, and something that Congress could really help, is to get the AMA, the American Medical Association, to change their intake form. The AVA has developed an intake form that would recommend doctors, which asks a couple of stupid questions. Are you an American veteran? Did you serve in Vietnam between these dates? So when the patient comes into any medical service clinic and fills out that horrible form you always have to do, they ask that question, they put it in so the doctor and the nurse immediately know that they may have been exposed, or that they have other opportunities with respect to disability under the VA system. And that changes the way the doctor interacts with the patient. Most doctors that I know don't even ask the question. All right, by the way, are you a veteran? But if we got the AMA to standardize that nationally,
Right.
which is simply, you get their butts in front of Congress and you ask them to do that, they'll do it, because it's not a big deal. It's just a program to change on the intake form.
And it's recommended to all the
Make
doctors.
a huge, all the doctors in the country,
Yeah, they work
make
off
a
that.
huge difference in advising veterans that you got prostate cancer, by the way, were you in Vietnam between these dates? Well, you have a presumptive disability. Are you connected with the VA? No. Well, here's a form. How many tens of thousands of American veterans would be better served by doing that simple little thing?
Why don't they change the dates? See,
Change the dates.
I went to Vietnam in '64, but then most Vietnam veterans are in the 70s. You know, they don't recognize you as a Vietnam veteran in '64.
Well,
We
That's
they
when,
do now.
that's when, that's
They do
when
now.
we spearheaded in there.
Right.
The MAG units in Vietnam were sent down there by President Eisenhower. That's how far back it goes. And after Dien Bien Phu, and the French moved out. And those men were issued 45 sidearms, and they were there as advisors only, but they died just as fast
Oh, yeah.
as anyone
Well, I tell you,
else.
This is real.
they said, I got letters from my dad saying, well, Charlie, I know you say you're in Vietnam, but they say your guys aren't carrying guns or anything, you're not. I said, yeah, right, Dad. You know?
Suzanne, how are we doing on time?
About 5 more.
Okay, I just want to make sure so we don't.
Sir, any other questions for the audience anywhere, or comments?
Absolutely. No,
I think you'll find that you got a lot of ESOs here.
Right.
And you'll find that there's a lot of on-the-ground experience with small, simple little things that can be done by just getting Congress to pay attention to them. That could radically change the quality of life for our veterans and their families.
Well, just a couple ideas, if I could just add real quick, just what you just mentioned on the AMA form, where the idea of rotating out medical units that are back and, you know, basically great training, moving them around, and it's actually a couple good ideas here.
Mandating VA contact. If you mandated VA contact on an annual basis, where they have veterans advocacy, we're an extraordinary state in that we have an opportunity to do this. But in a lot of states, veterans put that they're an American veteran on their driver's license application. I don't know why they do that, but they still do that. So there's a database opportunity.
Right.
If those kinds of things were assimilated and the VA was required at least once a year to make notification, believe me, you'd see a significant change in the quality of life of thousands and thousands of veterans and their families.
And things like that.
Well, in my experience with that VA is, I'm telling you, it was a ritual and futility as far as I was concerned.
One last thing I'd like to suggest is that
That's a
we have over
common comment among a lot of
600,000.
veterans.
We have over 600,000 pending applications for review for service. One of the things we changed when I was with Interior is the idea that we have VSOs out there. All the veteran service officers are now going through reaccreditation as mandated by the VA. Okay, I don't know if you know that, but all VSOs are now mandated to go through reaccreditation. If a VSO has a performance standard of, say, the gold standard, in other words, 99% of all the apps that he turns in are complete, legitimate, and are approved, I would recommend the VA certify that VSO as a VSO plus. And when that app comes in from that VSO, as approved by that VSO, it doesn't go through additional review at Utah.
Immediate
It goes
attention.
immediately into the service. If you did that, that's the only thing that I can see that would significantly change the 600,000
Processing
backlog. Backlog, because what you have is VSOs that are forced to go through accreditation, carry extraordinary E&O insurance now, and yet we do all that work,
And they redo
we
it.
turn it in, and they take it, and they start from a presumption that everything in it's allowed. And you have to reapprove it all. If you have an application that is complete, you've got your DD-214, you've got your medical records attached, you've got your copy of orders for Purple Hearts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and that VSO signs that and is a VSO plus, done. We completely revolutionized the permitting process in Interior when we did that, because we went back and we found that people, architects, for example, historical architects, if they had an outstanding performance level, we certified them, and they never were re-reviewed.
They were your full agents, in essence.
You're a fully activated agent of the United States government to approve the thing. And there's an existing way to do that we did in Interior that a VA can take a look at. They will not, we rate that recommendation, they will not do that. And that's an administrative change.
Well, you're asking a giant to budge, and they won't.
Congress somehow has to mandate to VA to fix this backlog, because the detrimental impact it's having is it's turning veterans off. They earn these benefits and they get so frustrated they're not coming back. And some of them are dying early because of that. That needs fixing. It needs Congress to mandate to VA to fix it. Don't talk about it, fix it.
What would you say the VSOs that would qualify for VSO, and I'll use your phrase VSO plus, what percentage of the VSOs would be? 10%, 30%?
You start, I would say you immediately
What would
start
you
at
guess?
10% based on the reaccreditation that's going to. And see, what you have is you have VSOs that were trained 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but because of all the court cases and everything else,
Yeah.
there's an extraordinary amount of change in new rules. Plus presumptive disabilities that have changed that they're not aware of. So they go through, the VA now has the highest rate of success on applications and appeals. And so our VSO training is the best. And it's just because we've been through it and we've had these problems. I have a VSO that's retired 32 years at VA. He's my state director. If he signs an app, believe me, that's a kosher app.
Yeah, that's going to
And I would say
make it
at least
95
10,
plus.
at least 10%
Of the
of the
current-
reaccredited VSOs, reaccredited, that's an important qualifier.
Right.
VSOs would qualify as a VSO plus.
And the goal there, again, and I think I understand, I just want to simplify it my own, kind of restate it.
It's a mayor thing.
Yeah, you know how that is. I know what I heard, and say it again, so you know what I'm saying. But the idea is that, again, if you end up as a VSO and you got a 95% success rate of your apps going through without any hiccups, any problems, I'm using 95%.
Sure, it's an arbitrary.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, over a period of time, and hypothetical 6 months, whatever the period of time is, that's maintained, bam, you're now a VSO plus.
Exactly. Now,
And
let me
now
make
you
another suggestion.
bypass all that other junk.
If you have a state director,
The senator knows this stuff more than I do.
Senator, I've been trying to get this idea pushed for 10 years, and it gets no place.
Yeah.
And the committee is a place where it can start.
Absolutely can.
And I'd be glad to testify.
I've got,
It
I've
makes
got
sense.
one question for you, and it deals with the situation where you don't have a VA hospital in this state, but you utilize hospitals on military bases.
Right, we have a partnership.
You have a partnership. How accessible are those military hospitals?
Let me tell you a couple of things. Number one, the military hospital in Elmendorf, it's a great idea. I supported the idea, although the mayor was gracious enough in property to put a hospital across from the Native Center, which would have been a better idea.
There it is.
But it's a great idea. The problem is veterans do not have priority for beds, number one.
They don't have priority for any treatment.
Number two, the VA already admits that even though this isn't built, they've run out of space and they're leasing the mall across the street here to put their dental and eye care in.
They're already at
So
capacity.
you have this explosion of vets with not only aging vets, but new vets. And I like the idea of mixing it, but the problem is,
not big
if
enough.
Elmendorf or the Fort Ridge comes back, they get priority on beds. And if you're in there and sick, you get shipped to Seattle. Guess what? We have 3 major hospitals, 4 hospitals, including the Native Hospital in this community, that have empty beds.
That's right.
That have empty beds. And when I talked to Al Parrish, who's my best friend, who's the CEO of Providence, he says, why build another freaking hospital? Just negotiate a contract with me that gives me a reasonable return on our costs, and we'll make those beds available to veterans.
And the idea of that from a hospital standpoint is they're paying for that space already.
That-
Every
no,
day.
it
Absolutely.
Makes perfect sense.
It's really easy.
Absolutely.
They are able to pay their bills.
That's right.
And they're also able to give the veterans better access to health care locally.
And if they do it at a lower, lower cost.
And
it's
don't
back to
allow the
beds.
reimbursement to take 6 months,
Right.
which is a big, big, big problem, not only for hospitals, but for clinics and doctors.
We're about out of time here. Does anybody else have any quick comments they want to throw in? They've got a tight schedule they've got to keep on. Any other questions or comments from anyone?
Just have one quick question. Mrs. Frank was talking about 2 things, transferability, and then also, I think, and was it Charlie? I'm sorry, who brought up the notion about providing schooling too for, whether it was vocational or some other kind of training. When I first looked at the Webb Warner bill, it may not be enough for a lot of training, but wasn't there a provision in there that there was up to $2,000 to get a certificate?
It's 2,000, right? Yeah.
Is that just not enough? Is that not realistic?
The problem is if it costs $800 to get a truck driving certificate, it's not enough. It's gonna have to be bumped up.
Yeah,
And his point,
2,000 is
please,
nothing.
listen to his point. The VA will ratchet that down and disqualify training programs as fast as they can.
Frank, there's no trade school. If you went out to the IBW trade school, you went out to Carpenters, you went out to the Palmer School, you went out to even the hairdresser schools, $2,000.
It's not gonna get you anywhere.
Doesn't buy you anything.
And the way they do that is they have to be VA approved.
Right.
And it's like a military hammer.
And that number of
$600.
$2,000 goes back to 1950.
And here's the, Frank, just because my experience, I sat 7 years as the chair of the Post-Secondary Education Commission for the state and also Student Loan Corporation for the state. This was a big challenge when I came in. It was very limited. So we had to open the door. One of the big issues was even when we opened that door, the cost for these trade schools were so far, in the sense of what you could get in loans and capacity was so low, we still had a problem. So we had to up those amounts in order to get more access because the volume of customer was there. I mean, people, they wanted to be a truck driver, they wanted to be a plumber, they wanted to be an electrician. These are good paying jobs, long-term careers, but the capacities weren't there. So you had to kind of juice it up. And then and the same thing, we went through this whole process of, making sure they were accredited. Once they're accredited, then it's a piece of cake. But it's getting the amount up and then making sure they're accredited.
It's important to note, I think part of it is you gotta get the door open and then you can make adjustments up. It's just like the mileage reimbursement. Couldn't get it where we wanted to, we've got to start on it, make some amendments next time around, bump that up, make sure the bureaucracy implements the law like the Congress intended it. That's a big issue. And I think we can do some good things. But you can't do anything unless I sit with groups like this and you make me aware of it. Truthfully, I mean, my staff's a great staff and they help me out, and sometimes they catch it, sometimes they don't. You guys catch all of it because you live it.
But you have to get away from the mentality that says no problem is so simple I can't complicate it. And that's just all it is.
No, that's a great word of wisdom for all of us to have.
And one other thing is the importance of timeliness.
Yeah.
We can't wait any longer, and it's getting worse. It's snowballing on you.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You're right.
You're not gonna speed up that VA bureaucracy, I'll guarantee
We
you
got some more
that.
questions on
And I don't care if you're.
You go to our website,
Get your
They-
websites.
We can work
Our
on
website.
that.
Get your website.